Hello and welcome to another episode. This is Racy Reviews. I am your host, Ashley Race, and today, unfortunately, our producer couldn't be with us. So I have an range, as always, of different films that I've watched within the week. Some good, some bad, some mixed, some I would like to say that I just wasn't too sure on. So let's start it off. On Netflix, I watched the new Extraction 2 with Chris Hemsworth. It was all right. It was fun. So yeah, we'll go straight in with that one. The action is what I wanted to obviously start off with because the action was just insane. Like the choreography between fight scenes, and there's one scene with obviously trying not to do spoilers as always. There's one scene where it goes on for 22 minutes and it starts in a prison, then it goes on to a car chase, then it goes into a factory, and then it goes on to a train. Now, honestly, I was absolutely blown away by obviously, it's not all done in one take, it's the smart shots, but it was just mental. It was such an adrenaline ride just for that 22 minutes. Now, unfortunately, that was probably about the best part of the whole film. Chris Hemsworth's good as always, usual self, but it just fell flat. Like I just don't know. The story just didn't intrigue me at all. I didn't think that the actual villains either themselves were scary at all. It just was dull. Really, really dull, and it was such a shame because the action in that film, especially compared to the first one, when the first one was like, right, I got to get out of India, I got to get this boy out, and it was just brilliant. Whereas this one, it just didn't have that urgency. It didn't feel like it was the same sort of film at all. It's a bit weird, really. So I'd recommend watching it. Definitely the first one, or at least just the prison scene, just to see his acting. Now, Netflix has recently as well announced that they are going in for Extraction 3. I'm hoping that obviously we might have a better story, maybe in new characters. Idris Elba's in this one, and not even like he was only in it for a couple of minutes. So again, you just lose everything in this film, and it was a real shame because, like I said, the action is just top notch and really, really interesting. So I rated that one 6 out of 10. Now, next on my list is Wrath of Becky. Now, this is a indie film, really interesting film. It came out quite a few years ago now, Becky, and it was just really different. It had Kevin James as a villain. So as soon as they announced Wrath of Becky, I was like, brilliant. This is going to be really fun and interesting and a good laugh, really. I just needed that this week. Not all the films I'm going to be reviewing that you'll notice are these like A24 or Arts House films. As much as I adore those style of films, it's just not always do I watch those films. I do like films where I can switch off and just enjoy, and this is one of them. Honestly, I was just blown away by it, how good the second one was. The lead actress is just fantastic. She's so funny. She's so engaging with the script. The sort of breaking of the fourth wall as well is a nice touch because then it just makes you feel a little bit more excited when you're watching it. Sean Scott Williams is in it, and he is so good. He plays this neo-Nazi right wing ex-marine who starts like a national front, basically, like a far right movement, and he's just so good. Yeah, that was a nice touch actually. Like thinking about it because I'm a massive Sean Scott Williams fan, and when you sort of look back at his filmography, American Pie, Role Models, and all these sorts of films, he's such a great comedy actor. So it's nice to see him do like a completely different array within this sort of horror comedy or black comedy at least. The gore was just fantastic. The kills were always on point. In the first one, I watched it again recently because my wife hadn't seen it, and just some of the scenes in that one, in the first one, let alone the second one, when they've got a bigger budget, you can just see where they've come from and where they've gone to, and where they take influence out of sort of John Wick and those styles of films. There's still so many unanswered questions for such an indie film, and it's a film that you're not expecting such a huge response and story to. You just think, it's a bit of a gore fest, it's a bit funny. Actually, there's a key in the first film, and then all of a sudden we found out the key's got coordinates in this film. And then I've just seen as well recently that they've just announced that they're going to do part 3. So obviously this key's got a whole overarching story. It's proper tongue in cheek. It's a bit of fun. It's a bit cheeky. It's just well worth a watch. So yeah, that one I rated 9 out of 10. So that is definitely on my recommended list this week. Next, I watched actually only just the other day, Mary and Max. Now, this is a bit of an old film, actually. It's late 2000s, so I've always wanted to watch this film. I just wanted to go in, enjoy it for what it was, but this film just ended up being so much more than what I thought it was going to be. So it's a claymation, so you know it takes a long time to make, and it's about a little Australian girl who basically has no friends. Her mum's an alcoholic and she wants a friend. So she rips out this page in the American call directory and it's got an address. So she just becomes pen pals with this random guy in America. Well, the guy turns out to have a few issues as well and be in a bit of a similar boat where he's a bit of a loner, a bit of a agoraphobe. You know, he goes to work and stuff, but he likes to be inside, really severe anxiety. And their friendship just blossoms. And the mum doesn't like it, but she sort of hideaways the letters and keeps it hidden. And it's such an interesting film because nothing really happens. No action, no, it's just a life story between two people, one in Australia, one in America, and you see the difference in their lives. And it's just really it's A, it's really sad, and B, it's just got some really bittersweet moments. And it tackles some really interesting things, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But in terms of cast, you've got Tony Colletti that plays Mary, and then you've got Philip Seymour Hoffman that plays Max. Now, that's all I have to really say. Toni Collette from obviously Hereditary, just phenomenal. She's an all-round great actress. And then Philip Seymour Hoffman, need I say more? You know, the late Philip Seymour Hoffman, his filmography is insane. You know, anything from like Mission Impossible to Kaput to Master, he's just an all-round actor. And seeing him in a film like this was just a really sort of nice memory of him. Now, I was saying earlier, obviously, about some maybe of the things that it covers. For such a claymation film, and it's a very adult film as well, it's not for children, even though it's claymation, is it covers themes of addiction, it covers themes of anxiety, agoraphobia, cardiophobia. There's loads of different things that it really covers. Now, this is great in films because actually, when you sort of look at a lot of representation of anxiety and depression and alcoholism, it's a bit archetype, it's a bit stereotypical. You know, he's a boozer, or oh, I'm scared, you know, I'm having panic attacks. And it really wasn't. It was like a real sort of true representation, which was really nice, especially coming from someone that suffers with really severe anxiety. That seeing this true representation was just really bittersweet. Now, the story, obviously, of Mary as she grows up, she sort of follows her mum's steps a little bit with the alcoholism. And there's just this scene. Now, it is a little bit of a spoiler. So, obviously, if you want to go forward, then you're more welcome. I absolutely cried like a baby when I was watching this. This scene just hit me so much. And it was a scene of she'd lost her pen pal, there had been an argument, and her husband had just left her to go off with a man in New Zealand. And she overdoses on Valium and drinks, and then she goes to hang herself. And the music is so sweet, and the knock at the door, and it's just so bitter because you just really feel that, you know, she's fallen into the same footsteps as her mother, and that's not what she wanted at all. And all she's done is become a mother and waste her life. And it's just, it really, really hits you. It's really hard hitting. And obviously, you know, spoiler, she doesn't die. But it's just a real perfect sort of representation of anxiety. You know, you're seeing someone racking through their head and the shakes and the panic attacks and the palpitations. And all of this is done in claymation, for God's sake. It's not even live action. You know, where is the true representation of anxiety, depression at a live action level? Like, you could, yes, you can say, you know, there is a few out there, but it's still not. It's still very archetype and very stereotypical. You know, it's 2023 now. Where is all this great representation for it? And yeah, I just sat there and wept. Honestly, it was just so beautiful, so bittersweet, and the acting was fantastic. I just really enjoyed it. So I rated that one 9 out of 10. Following on from this, I watched Sanctuary. Now, Sanctuary was a bit of a different film, to say the least. So it's a nice little runtime of an hour and 36 minutes, and it follows a dominatrix and Hal, her wealthy client, and a disaster that ensues when Hal tries to end their relationship. Now, in terms of this one, it was just so well shot. The dialogue was fantastic, but I'll come to that in a bit. Starting off, you know, it runs like a play. Now, I being sort of, or I've done acting, seeing it run like a play was just really, really a nice touch, and seeing how they'd set out the room and the camera angles and the real quick conversation between like 1 2 1 2, and it was as if it was so realistic, and you're watching this actually on set. It was so nice to watch and just really enjoyable. The acting was absolutely fantastic because you had the stellar Christopher Abbott, who was just brilliant. He's from Girls, and then you had Margaret Qualley, who played Rebecca, who's the main sort of dominatrix, and she was just absolute tour de force. She was so believable and then manipulating, and then this whole film run around, and it comes on to my next point is power play. And who's got the more dominance? Is it the man that's got all the money and thinks that he's wealthy and he's well off, or actually is it this woman that knows his in and outs and knows that he succumbs to this being loving of pressure and being belittled by women? Who has the most power? And it literally, no way in this point of film until the end do you realize who's truly got the power, because it so flits back and forth so quickly. Obviously, the majority is the character of Rebecca, but how has these moments where you just think, oh, hang on a minute, is he going to kill her? What's he going to do? Could he do something? It was so good to see a film that's set around dominatrix, but it wasn't so sexualized. Like if we look at sort of, God forbid, like 50 Shades of Grey or 365, any of those films, and it's just porn, isn't it, really? Like, whereas this, it was so beautifully done and shot, and I think there was only 2 scenes of actual sort of like a sexual nature in there at the whole film. It's still got an R rated because it is obviously the themes and what they're talking about is quite sexualized, but it's not just glorifying sex and dominatrix for the sake of it. It's actually real sort of homage to it, and it really sort of comments on society about what men want and women control. And yeah, I really really enjoyed this film, and also the cinematography was just so beautiful. The room and the layout of the room, it felt so Wes Anderson-esque, where everything was in its place and it needed to be there for that reason. And the color schemes and some of the shots, like when they were talking, the color and the lighting would change, like due to emotion. And I'm like, this is such a play. Like I could see this being a West End or Broadway play. And to be fair, I'd actually go see it because, yeah, very, very impressed. So in terms of that one, I rated it 8 out of 10. Next on my list is The Machine. Just hilarious. So this one is one of my favorite comedians, Bert Kreischer, and he tells a story about going to Russia and basically falling in with the Russian mob and them liking him, and his whole story about robbing a train. So somehow someone thought it was a good idea to turn this into a film, and I'm so glad they did. So the short synopsis of it is Bert's drunken past catches up with him 20 years down the road when he and his father is kidnapped by those Bert wronged 20 years ago while drunk on a college semester abroad in Russia. Now, in terms of this one, it just was so stupid and so much fun. I absolutely adored it. It's got a runtime of 2 hours. Now, for a comedy, you've got to absolutely pull the punches on that, and you've got to be absolutely on the ball for like a good 2 hour comedy. And I feel like if you're a true fan of Bert Kreischer, or of the story, then yeah, you're probably going to enjoy this. But if you don't like that sort of satirical American stylized comedy, or it's a bit tongue in cheek and in your face, you might not like this one. But personally, I'm a big fan of Bert Kreischer, so I just sat there and absolutely howled for about 2 hours. So obviously, it stars Bert Kreischer. Mark Hamill as the dad. I have no clue how he pulled Mark Hamill because he's so funny in it. Jimmy Tatro, who has done quite a lot for Funny or Die, he was really good playing a younger Bert. I well enjoyed that. And Iva Babic. Now, Iva Babic, I've never really seen in much, but she plays Irina, who is the Russian mobster's daughter. She was so funny and interesting as a character. I wanted to know more. So, yeah, I really, really enjoyed this film. It was cheesy, yes, but it's American comedy. What do you expect, Bert was just on point. There were so many funny moments because they play on the fact that he's not this, he's not just this drunk sort of person that goes around and just tells the machine story and takes his shirt off. He's a little bit more to him. And that's what was a really nice take on it as well. But yeah, that's a nice little short one I'm going to do on you. But 7 out of 10. Guys, honestly, if you want a good laugh, just go watch it. It's not really much I can say about it. The action was good. it was just funny. It just is a good laugh, and I feel like we need more of these, especially in these sort of times with everything going on. So yeah, definitely, if you want a good laugh, go watch The Machine. And lastly, in terms of my reviews, is The Flash. Now I'm going to try and hold all reservations towards the end because going in, I was so hyped for this film. I think maybe too overhyped. You know, you had all of these reviews saying, "Oh, it's fantastic." Then you had Tom Cruise saying, "Oh, you know, he phoned the director because this film was phenomenal." Maybe because it was just too overhyped, I just didn't feel it. But like I said, I'll go through what I think, and at the end, I'll give you my sort of opinion at the end. I didn't like the fact they recast Barry's dad. Like, originally, Barry's dad was Billy Crudup, and this time it was the guy from King Kong. And I'm just like, he just didn't have the sort of swag and the sort of the style acting that Billy Crudup does. And it that really threw me because I didn't realize as well. The person who played Iris, I mean that she's a good actress, but my problem is that they underutilized Iris. Like, if you've got Iris in the story of Flash, she's quite a big character, and yet she was just thrown to the side for a couple of scenes. Obviously, we know who's in this. Michael Keaton, just, he was so good. Absolutely fantastic. And the score and bringing in Danny Elfman's Batman, like absolutely infamous soundtrack of Batman by Danny Elfman, just using that and utilizing it in such a way with a bit of a twist was so nice. Sitting there so hyped just listening to it. The new Supergirl, I was blown away by. I loved how dark and gritty she was, and yeah, just when as soon as she come on the scene, I was just blown away because it's not like, oh, here's Supergirl, and then, you know, then we go into the action. It was like bang, straight into the action with her. So yeah, I really liked that. I thought that was such a really nice part of the film. Zod's just most pointless character. Honestly, now Zod in Man of Steel, I thought was phenomenal. I'm a big fan of Michael Shannon. This dead. There was no build up. There was no. I felt like obviously yes, we already know who Zod is, but because we already know who Zod is, it just sort of just threw him in and said, "Yeah, here's Zod. He's taken over the planet." You know, what do we do now? Oh well, we better take him out before he kills everyone. And it just didn't have. It was a bit lackluster, and I was really gutted by it. Towards the end, in terms of the time loop, yeah, absolutely blown away. I'd say the last half of the film until the very end, I absolutely enjoyed. It was fun, it was good, it was a proper Flashpoint, but then it wasn't. And this is what annoys me is that you've come in and you've given the first solo Flash film a representation of Flashpoint that isn't nowhere near Flashpoint. And Flashpoint is, I would arguably say, one of my favorite Flash DC stories because it's so interesting the take on it and the fact that you have, at least in the comic, you know, you have Thomas Wayne who comes back, and Thomas Wayne is Batman, and you have Martha Wayne who is Joker. And then you've got the war between the Amazonians and the Atlanteans. There's so much going on there with the story, and then obviously Flash trying to get back his powers. Yeah, I really like that. Like the comic is just amazing. This it just there was so much going for it, and there were so many good scenes where I'm like, "Oh, I really like this." And then you compare it to there was I had to do this spoiler free. Yeah, there was so many stoner. It felt like jokes. It felt like watching Scooby Doo a little bit, where it was like, ah, and it was just like the first time, yeah, it's funny, and then the second time, yeah, okay, this is okay, and then the third time, it's just like, oh, please stop. I just felt like they tried to make it so light-hearted for the sake of it because obviously it's DC, and then they're trying to, you know, outdo Marvel, but it ain't gonna happen, you know. Just give us this dark, gritty film we're all been waiting for. That's the point of DC, isn't it? Cameos, which I'm definitely not even gonna talk about, but oh my god, they were so good. That's probably one of my favorite parts of the whole film, I would say. Even brought a tear to my eye. There was a couple of nods, and I was like, "Oh, that's yeah." Just tip my hat to it. Beautiful. And then we come to the ending. Now, there's a cameo at the ending. Now, I don't really know what the whole spiel about this is. There's rumors that James Gunn changed the ending so that, and obviously James Gunn can come in and do his whole reboot. And if that's true, I'm a little bit annoyed because why bring this character in? And then also, it's a pointless film. And this is what gets me so worked up and angry is it is a pointless film because of A, it's had nothing going right for it. We go back and let's look at the fact that DC's rebooting. It's had COVID. It's had the Ezra Miller scandal. It's had reshoots and parts. And I'm just like, I'm glad I saw it. Don't get me wrong. But there's no point to it. There's no lead on. There's no nothing. That is it. It's just the end of it. And I just, for a Flashpoint to do that and it set up so many things and then not do anything with it yet again with DC, it was a bit disheartening. And I think it just really threw me. And like I said, this whole build up and we've been waiting for Flash for so long. And, I'm not condoning Ezra Miller at all, but I love his character of Flash. And it's just hard to see go through all of this. And yeah, I was just so let down because in my heart, I know I enjoyed the film, but analytically, there's so much wrong with it. Like, people have come out about this whole bad CGI. Now, that in the time sort of sphere, I want to call it, I actually like the fact that the CGI was slightly off because it felt like it was a warping of time. But you cannot then say that that's bad CGI all the way through the film because you look at some parts and when Batflick is on his bike, his jaw doesn't, it moves across his mask. So you can tell it's so CGI'd. And in talking of that, why all of a sudden has the Bat bike got an anchor on the back of it to turn it? Like, I loved Christopher Nolan's Bat bike where the wheels would sort of spin round in different directions because that's a bit more believable because the tech and he can build it. This was like, oh no, we're just going to magically morph an anchor out of metal and it's going to like Transformers and then turn him. There are so many bits like that where I'm just like, what are you? Are you trying to do OGDC where, we're all gadgets with Batman and we're all tech and fun with it? Or are you trying to be more serious like Christopher Nolan? Because you flip from one end to the other and it's just so jarring. It really, really is jarring. But I'm going to move on because obviously, like soundtrack, like I said, soundtrack all the way through, I was well impressed with. Yeah, it really, really bugged me, this film, because I think the hype killed it for me. Massively, massively killed it for me. So, unfortunately, even in my heart, I want to rate it more because I enjoyed certain aspects, but as a whole film, 6 out of 10. Yeah, 6 out of 10. I'm going to have to. I can't even justify giving it more, and that is such a shame. So we're coming towards the end of my podcast now, and I wanted to try something different. So I wanted to basically have a look through the news and we'd talk about movie news, and then gradually build it up and build it up and build it up. The first one that I saw is the Evil Dead director addresses possibility of a sequel. Now, please, 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 please. I was a big fan of Evil Dead Rise. The way they left it and the ending and how open it was, give us another installment. You killed off Ash versus Evil Dead, which is probably one of the greatest horror TV shows and comedy TV shows, and then you can't just kill off another franchise. Please, please do not do it. Another one was that the June Part 2 trailer, we got a full length, sort of 3-minute long trailer. Wow, just epic. Like, I generally cannot wait for that film. I'm a huge Dune fan and I really, really hope it's going to be good. They also announced and teased to the fans the cast for Mortal Kombat, and I'm so happy for who they've cast as Johnny Cage. And I really think Kyle Urban is going to absolutely smash it because it's just pretty much like his boy's character. Is that sort of, but less harsh. It's more jokey, and I think he can do it. And I really, really sort of hope that he's going to absolutely smash that one out of the park. And the other one was seeing the teaser for the logos for the live action Avatar: Last Airbender, and seeing some of the character photos. I am so hyped. It worries me a little bit though because obviously the original showrunners left, but then also in hindsight, they've now joined with Paramount and started their own production company for Avatar Studios. And not to be obviously mistaken with the blue people. And they're going ahead with more animation, which I'm so behind. And we've got a feature length film coming out in cinemas and new series. So in terms of the Netflix one though, I really, really do hope that it is good. I just don't want it to be sort of like M. Night Shyamalan's just appalling retale of it. So that is the podcast for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm just going to keep doing this each week. Like I said, I don't care if everyone listens or a couple of people listen. This is just me to get it off my chest. If you have any comments or any films you want me to review, send it over. Check out my website. I'll obviously keep that up to date with reviews, and check my social media, which is Racy Reviews on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you very much for listening.
That's a wrap.